Hi, you guys. This is Rachel here, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me for another YouTube video question of the month. So this week, if you are new to the channel, I always invite you to check out my website, which is themodernshaman.net. It is a wonderful resource just to follow through with your own education in terms of your spiritual development. I have a lot of modules on there that have practice activities, lecture, personal questions, shadow work, guided meditations, and it moves you through module by module and available masterclass. If you are interested, you can do it either topic by topic, or you can take the entire masterclass as a holistic cumulative process for your learning. So that's always available on my website, as well as personal sessions with me. If you'd like to sit with me, I have segments of time from 30 minutes to 2 hours where I offer personal sessions one-on-one, either via Zoom, teleconferencing, or on the phone, or in person in my office here in San Antonio. So I would love to hear from you in that way if I haven't seen you or connected with you yet. And also, if you'd like to send in your question, you just go to the website, themodernshaman.net, go to that contact form, and let me know that you have a question for the YouTube channel. Okay, today's question came in and it says, I wanted to ask Spirit's perspective on pharmaceuticals. I was on a dozen over the last 11 years, and during a prayer, God said to help me receive my blessing I was asking for, I needed to get off my medications. I'm finally doing great, but it's been so hard because my body was addicted and didn't know how to run on its own. I thought the medications were meant to help my body, but I had to take medications to sleep, and then I had to take medications to give me energy during the day. Then I had to take medications to keep me happy, and my own body was basically empty or void. It's been a long, hard process back into my own body. And as simple as it sounds, I wanted to hear what Spirit had to say about it. Okay. What a great question. I say this often, and it's so interesting how I have this time with you all. And so many of the questions I feel like that come in for this channel are so good because they relate to so many people. Instead of just individual sessions when I work one-on-one, they're very specific to you. But this is a great question because I see this across the board. There is like an epidemic of this kind of empty or voided shell of our human body, and keeping ourselves chemically running and functioning, but almost like a robot, like a voided consciousness that happens when medications begin to perform all the functions that our spirit should imbue the body to do. So, all right, great question. And you just kind of said, I want to hear what Spirit has to say about it, but I'll tell you a little bit about what Rachel thinks about it, is that this is a slippery slope. Because you kind of hit on it when you said that a lot of what you went to the medications for were to help you. And so often when we notice that our body is talking to us, our body is saying, I'm tired. I can't even tell you how many people, when I remote view and energy meld into their body, they're just exhausted. There's so many of us on this planet that are just so tired, and we don't give ourselves enough rest. It's simple, that's totally simple, but we don't do it. We don't listen to our body. We think that when we're tired, that means we push harder. When the body is saying, I'm tired, that means I need more sleep in order to reboot and function in this human form with the level of activity that's being required of me, or the level of my mental processing or emotional processing. There are times in our lives when we simply need more sleep, more rest in our schedule, which means a typical 9-to-5 job, or if we work on the weekends, we need to make sure that we take time off during the week. We have to create a schedule for ourselves that feels like we get that reboot or rest and rejuvenation into our form, instead of taking a pill that gives me more energy. This is a mindset that is more modern, meaning it's not an ancient practice. In ancient holistic practices or healing practices, we were used to the idea of a process or time being an aspect of the healing. We were given time to mourn, right? In ancient mourning practices, we wore black, we mourned, we may have been in isolation for a particular amount of time when someone that we were close to passed away. When we became of age or went through maturity or vision quest or a sense of coming of age, we had a process where we went alone. We took time to get into the physical, the emotional, the spiritual space of taking on our own responsibility for our lives. Nowadays, you move from college straight into it. I mean, there's no time of contemplation of like, what is it that I'm supposed to do, or where's my purpose, or where do I feel called? We in the ancient community were given time and used time as part of the medicinal process for healing. I don't know when that began to change, if it was part of the industrial age or things becoming more mechanical and chemically changeable. But within our human experience, we started to look towards that fast reaction, or like, give me a pill that fixes it. When a lot of times our ailments begin with our human structure that we create that is non-functional for us or is not helpful for our process, where our natural body can rejuvenate itself and bounce back. We are not giving it that natural time to do so. Instead, we're asking for a pill to chemically induce that. Well, it may chemically keep the body running, but what happens is that because we are no longer listening to it, we begin to break the connection with our body talk, our body speaking to us through our own intuition and consciousness internally, telling us what it needs, and us not listening to it, right? Instead, maybe we get a headache, which is like, okay, I need to drain some energy. I've got too much energy going on. I'm thinking, I'm overthinking. I'm too mentally stimulated. I need to get out in nature. I need to ground the electric charge that's too much inside the brain. When the body's speaking like that, a lot of times we take a pill, which basically communicates to the body, shut up, I don't want to hear it, I don't have time to listen to you, I gotta move on. I'm done with you. So it breaks a sense of trust and unison with our intuitive intelligence of our own body, our DNA, our sense of connection there to our internal world, when really those are meant to be in harmony and they can work beautifully together. So we have to be conscientious. It doesn't mean all pharmaceuticals are bad. There's not a morality issue there, but there is a conscientious discernment, just wisdom of slowing down and listening to your body and making sure that you do that first and foremost, so that your body still has that innate connection to it. When we go to externals too often to fix our internal world, and this is true of therapists and advice from friends and all of this too, okay? When we go to the external more than we do the internal, we can break the trust with our intuitive communication with our own body consciousness. And so we start to go to the outside more than we're listening to our internal voice. And we essentially are devalidating what our own consciousness, our own body, our own intuitive awareness has to say, and instead validating or prioritizing the external. Again, this creates kind of a break within the trust of our own sense of self. And because our spiritual and human experience in the 3D is meant to blend body, mind, and spirit, we don't function as well when those are not in harmony. We create a sense of dissonance or friction in our own experience in our body. And then our body starts to have more ailments because those are not in harmony. We aren't listening, and the breach of trust of that my body is saying something to me and I hear it and I listen and I value it. I trust what my body has to say and I give it what it's asking for. When we're not doing that, that's also with food, okay? Because what is that? That is the nurturing of our body to sustain our human organs so that they function well, to sustain even our hormonal balance, our chemical balance, our nervous system, and our responses there, which is trauma response and emotional body. So all of these things connect. And even when you talk about just the topic of pharmaceuticals, really it's a lot of things that we may put as a higher or more relevant source of information for our bodies, when in fact the original sense of intuition and listening to our body is what we need to get back to. And this is an addiction. It is an addiction. It is a very common addiction, and it is so common that we don't have any sort of societal issue with it. There are so many people that take medication to help them sleep. I'm not talking about herbs or natural things or lavender or, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about chemicals that are prescribed to you. Many people take them over the counter or from a doctor to help them sleep. That's a very natural process that if something's wrong there, you need to go back again to the original source of your body and get into a regular cycle, or stay with your body long enough to understand its regular sleep cycles. There is a natural cycle that will happen within the body that gets exhausted and needs to sleep. If you are getting too much electrical charge, meaning your brain is going, and you don't have enough ability to let that go, that's grounding right there. That means I don't need to stop this. I need to ground that energy. There's so much activity here in my mental mind that energy, just like static electricity, needs to be discharged. It's discharged through grounding, through walking barefoot on the ground, through getting in nature and the oxygen levels that are available to us in trees when we are present in that level. Not going to an oxygen bar, like literally getting out in nature, and that will ground that energy from you. Then you'll be able to sleep. There's a sense of that natural discharge of energy. The same if you are taking medications to give you energy during the day. There is a natural pattern of how much at different times of your life you are capable of producing, how much expenditure of energy. If we are not paying attention to that and honoring that and saying, okay, a 9 to 5, my job maybe is 9 to 5, but it's requiring that I work all evening as well to plan for the next day, to keep communication with clients. If we don't have a balance there for a natural cycle of when my body is done, that I can turn off the expenditure or the giving of energy, or we don't give ourselves time of like a weekend or a Sabbath or a non-work day to where we say in our schedule, I'm not doing the laundry that day. I'm not planning activity for the kids. I'm not going to cook. I'm going to cook the day before and that's my day off. I just have everything prepared, or whatever it is. If we don't delegate that for ourselves, then we'll never feel like our natural battery of energy is sustained. There needs to be a time where we are literally giving that battery a break. Part of that is sleep, but also part of it is scheduling the cycles of life where there is a sense of peace, contemplation, relaxation, playfulness, a non-responsibility of that day or that time. That is very important for our natural cycles of energy to feel rebooted. Otherwise, you'll find that you don't enjoy your job anymore, even if it was something that you feel really purposed about at the beginning, because essentially your energy or your motor for your own energetic body is depleted. It cannot recharge itself appropriately. Let me see. Medications to keep me happy. It's another one. A lot of times this comes up when we aren't processing our emotional trauma, or we don't have emotional intelligence to know how to work through conflict, disappointment, all of the negative aspects that we may experience in our human lifetime. And we've identified that there's issues, and instead of working through those issues, we take a pill to chemically make us happy. Okay, so we're happy, and then this seems to not be important, right? It's kind of like sweeping it under the rug because chemically I'm fine. I mean, all those hormones are firing and I feel happy. And so essentially it negates that karmic process of processing all of the trauma or negativity or learning lessons from the negative aspects of our life. If we do that, oftentimes what happens is we get stuck in this karmic cycle of repeating the same lessons over and over and over. You get in the same bad relationships because you're chemically happy, but you haven't learned the lesson from what those were supposed to teach you in the first place. Or we get jobs and we're working for the same egomaniac boss type. You know, different name, different face, same personality. And you're like, why do I get myself in this situation all the time? Because we're not gleaning from those situations what it is we're supposed to do. There is a psychological, emotional, spiritual process through each of those that we are to progress through. This is our evolution as a soul. This is part of our ascension path of like why we're here on earth. And the chemicals, which are connected to our emotional body, our hormones, right, are supposed to help us identify when something is needing to be processed, when something is needing to, and it's not always negative. It doesn't mean you got to go way down in the shadow and all this stuff. It just means you need to have a takeaway. What's the lesson there so that I know it and I do things differently next time around? I look for different things in a job, in a boss. I create a boundary for myself that I'm not going to get into that type of relationship. I see it now. When we are on medications that essentially neuter that emotional guidance system, then it's harder to identify those patterns in our own life. And those can be through pharmaceuticals, that can be through simple other addictions in our life. Addictions to pleasure, that can be food, that can be sex, that can be anything addictive that feels like, okay, I'm happy now, I'm good now, and I'm happy, and I begin to negate what my emotional system is trying to teach me, or the lesson that is there in the contrast or the negativity or the uncomfortable anxiety of a new situation or a lesson that needs to be learned. Instead of just trying to neuter the anxiety, we have to get to discernment, wisdom from the takeaways of our life. Otherwise, we become dependent on the chemical to change the human action, but we miss the spiritual component and conscious component to it all. So again, I want to say, I'm not saying all pharmaceuticals are bad. They're not. This is an individual process of you still staying in alignment with your own internal intelligence, your own intelligence of your divine human form, why you pick that form, why it's right for you, and the connection that is innate within you. You are born with that when the spirit takes on the form, that there is a link in communication between the two. Some have that developed more because they've honored it and validated it and developed that line of communication. And some of us haven't, but it doesn't mean you can't strengthen that muscle of connection and communication by listening and then following through with what your body's telling you. The easiest way of breaking that connection too, and people do it all the time, is essentially we know what foods our body likes, because our body gets indigestion when something's not good for it. It gets gassy, it gets like it tries to have acid reflux and spit it back out. Our body's like, I don't want this. Don't feed me this. And instead we take a pill for the acid reflux, or we don't listen to the process of what our body is telling us it wants and doesn't want. It's different for every person. It's not like a particular dietary regimen is right for everyone. It's the connection to the body and the intelligence of what your body is telling you would be the highest functioning capacity for your body. And listening and then following through with that beyond what we consider just a momentary pleasure of something we eat, or a momentary chemical change of something we need, but actually getting back to the basics of that. When I heard that first part of your question, like Spirit said, God said, that he wanted to bless you, you need to get off your medications. I think that's not true for everyone. I don't want to say that. Like, some people are on medications that their organs are not doing what they're supposed to do, and so it's just a normal function of allowing their heart to beat, allowing their blood sugar to be balanced, or whatever it may be. There are certain medications that are functions of the organs, and then there are certain, like the ones you indicated, have to do with almost a breach, like I said, in the trust of that body system itself and the intelligence of that own consciousness there. So I want to kind of have that caveat that it's different for every person. And I think the key there is your communication with Spirit, honoring that. And I always would say that this is a process. The fact that it took you 11 years to go through this process means that you did it in cohort with your regular doctors. And that's important, because the body literally can have like a stroke if we all of a sudden go off our medications. It can cause harm if our system is not familiar with how to run itself without those medications. It literally gets addicted to that, and it knows how to run only from those chemicals. And then we start to not produce them naturally because we've been on that medication. So you do need to go through that process with a medical, with your doctor or some sort of medical expert that is familiar with the medications you're on and the dosages you're on, and it is a process. And I'm glad that you did that as well, or had the wisdom to go through that as well, because that's just part of our functioning of our human body too, to be wise about that. It starts to learn to function in the way that we tell it to. All right, well, I hope that is helpful to you guys, and that you gleaned some information somewhere in there. I will be back next week with a new video. Mwah! Blessings.